Finally.
Yeah. So
tougher and tougher.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
It's tougher. And I was just watching in a movie. They said that. Actually, I heard this before. Like in life, I guess life, like all types of life, they suffer. But I guess that's the price you pay of getting tougher, right?
Yeah. You cannot get tough unless you've been through the difficulties that make you tougher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mind you, we could do something a little less sometimes, I can imagine, like the carpenter that says, "Thank you, Lord," every time he hits himself on the thumb with his hammer. But then he says, "Thank you, Lord," but not always on the same thumb, please.
Yeah, I watched all the Star Trek movies that came up.
One after the other?
Yeah, I watched them, but I watched it backwards. I got throughout the whole week, I watched all of them.
Everybody get younger. You're going back in time. Like,
and that was one of the episodes in the movie. They go back.
Button.
Yeah, yeah. And one movie they go back in time, and how they do it, they go really fast at warp speed toward the sun to go back in time. So I guess that's the light that they always talk about. Oh.
The creation of the solar system.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I really want to look into that. Like, do you know like a lot of information on that, on the whole creation?
Well, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I don't think you were either. I don't think we know anybody that was there.
Yeah.
But if you think about the solar system and the Big Bang, you're dealing with 13 to 15 billion years ago. Question that still remains in all scientists' thoughts are: was there anything before, and will there be something after?
And when they say after, do they mean after?
Well, the options are that the solar system continues to expand and everything dies along the way because the suns and the place where things live will be too far apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's one option. The other one is that at one stage of the game, the motion reverses, and instead of expanding, they come closer and closer together and create the big crunch, opposed to
the Big Bang.
The Big Bang.
I thought that was just a term they use for like economics or something.
Crunch is the coming together of all things back into a singularity. If one considers that the Big Bang occurred when everything was one, and it blew apart, Big Crunch is the putting it all back together again.
Where else in nature do you see that, where everything?
Well, that's what they're doing with the hermaphrodite.
Yeah, that's through they're inducing that. So.
Human beings begin that journey, check out all the options, and then reverse the process, or at least crunch the process. Return to what it was at first. And it's not just human beings, it's worms and all kinds of things.
And that's what they meant when they, in the Bible, at least when they said they forged Adam out of the dirt, I guess because he was a worm, I guess, in the beginning.
Well, eventually, if you go back far enough, you're down to the level of the atom and the quarks and quarks and all of that stuff. And as it grows out of there, it passes through the time of worm, flatworm, then an eel.
Yeah.
Then it grows legs, and crawls over things and goes on land. And
yeah, and you see hints of that because other animals, like animals in the sea, that are mammals. So that's like, I guess, hinting at it's related to, I guess, us human beings.
Yeah.
Because they feed the babies in some way. What do you know about like other bodies in the outer space, like?
Well, one thing you know is numbers. Numbers suggest when you have that number of possibilities of other places in the universe, that the odds are that other life does exist elsewhere.
Yeah.
Truth in numbers, it's just a calculation based on the total. But that doesn't mean that we come from there, and it doesn't mean that we can go there. What we know of science can't go faster than the speed of light. There are theories suggest we might, but none of it has been proven or shown to be practical.
Yeah.
Bending light and allowing you to take a shortcut sounds an interesting proposition, but if it kills you along the way in order to do it, basically is of no interest. So, as far as we know, light years is what we have to deal with. Light years suggest that you can't go throughout the universe in a lifetime of people who exist today. Might be able to if you put them to sleep and they hibernate. 50 years later, they wake up in a totally different place.
You know, it's possible to put somebody in like hibernation. Like I've seen that in movies. I don't even think it was.
Well, I don't see why it's not possible. If bears can sleep through the winter, then the theory suggests that yes, you can slow down the body functions to a point where it doesn't need same kind of energy as it would on a day-to-day basis. But from that point, if you know it's possible, you can usually expand upon it. So I don't see why it would not be possible. But you always have the ability to clone from DNA anyway. So send one person out, that person could have cloned themselves a number of times along the way, so that in the end there's another person there, but it's made from the people you sent out.
Now, this clone, how long do you think a lifespan? I guess guessing. Well,
most physicists and scientists seem to suggest that a normal lifespan should be about 120 years. Then something begins to happen that shuts the system down if it were allowed to live 120 years. The problem is stress. You have good stress and you have bad stress. And bad stress reduces life. Good stress increases life, maximizes life. So the more you can reduce those things that are responsible for bad stress, the longer you live. That's the approach they take, and they say 120 years should be normal for our type of being.
Now, when we were different, like obviously we were a lot different thousands of years ago. We probably, especially before the Ice Age, or maybe even right after the Ice Age, we probably lived longer than that.
Well, that's a possibility if one considers that people were hunters and foragers, they didn't have to commute to work. They just lived by picking apples and eating whatever happened to walk by that day. There were few people and lots of supply.
Oh, but then you think about it, but then maybe the lifespan could have been shorter because animals slaughtering people.
If you get lazy and
you die.
Not much energy is being used, it may, in fact, reverse the process and make you live shorter. Most people, I think, in science think that the average age of a human being would have been 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And then came agriculture. It increased to 50 years.
You're talking about the agricultural revolution?
Yeah, so that you had food to last over the winter type of thing. And you lived in a place protected from the animals rather than having to outrun them if they were chasing you, that type of thing. So they moved it up to 50 years. And then came the Industrial Revolution and moved it up to 75. Technological revolution should move it to 100. Right now, we seem to be in an area between 75 and 80 as an average. For our society in this country, in your country, but not necessarily in Haiti or Dominican Republic or many places in Asia and Africa, because they're not removing the negative stresses as quickly as we are in our society. We are creating some different negative stresses, with living with technology and what have you. But our average seems to be basically stuck around 80.
Yeah, it's weird because on one hand they don't have negative stresses, but they have a lot of negative stresses in other societies, but yet they seem to be more in tune with themselves.
Happiness is basically part of living longer. Happiness doesn't come from technology. It's a basic state of mind. How comfortable you feel in your skin, your circumstances at the time. Somebody that has to eat rats may be happier than someone who eats beef if they happen to live in a place where there's rats to eat, and other people live in a place where there's nothing to eat. Everything is relative.
So yeah, but like outer space and stuff. So in that one movie, the first one, Star Trek, I guess it was the first movie they came out with. I think it came out in 82, or I think it was 82. But and there's a machine that I don't know, it's this machine that was set in the past and it came back like 300 years later, and it accumulated all this knowledge. And one of the things, it wanted to meet its creator, because that was its task, was to accumulate knowledge. And I think about ourselves, because I guess that's our task, to accumulate knowledge. And when you see that in evolution, from just learning, I guess you evolve from learning. That's what it seems like to me.
To me, accumulating wisdom, which is a derivative of knowledge, which is a derivative of information. Accumulating wisdom is the only purpose for living that makes you happy.
Yeah, it does. It's like so valuable.
Yeah.
But I've heard there's another allegory. They say that you can never really accumulate all the wisdom. Huh?
Well, I suspect that unless you happen to be a self-teaching computer, you don't have enough to put in place.
Huh.
And it takes more than one lifetime.
Yeah.
That's why it's like making steel. You have to put it back in the fire and pound on it again.
But I don't think that computer even done it, because that's part of the reason why it's sending out new slaves out to space or whatever, to accumulate knowledge.
Yeah, well, each category of slave is involved in some task that can't be handled by a single person. For the cumulative effect of their efforts brings forth new knowledge. The machine is made of thousands of parts, and it could be thousands of different people that invent each part. And it's only when you assemble it together that it functions as a unit.
Now, since you were saying that a task like us to basically experience, learn, and bring it back to creation, I think that's one of the reasons why I guess Neanderthal wanted to go out to in outer space and see what was out there, because, like, it's part of the accumulating, Like,
yeah, the difference is accumulation for the purpose of learning about the reasons and the future progress of life. That's one side of it. Accumulating for self-serving purposes is a totally different one. Yeah. And any gatekeeper will tell you that the toll gators that accumulate can sit on a pile of gold, but it doesn't make them happy. In fact, makes them feel more insecure because they're always worried about people stealing what they have.
So what they're doing is just basically digging themselves a ditch. Yeah. The more they... And these Neanderthals, in one movie I seen, I gave us like hint. These they weren't capable of being individuals, right? Like human beings are, because they're all connected with each other. So like,
I think they're in the world of Neanderthalers. There was a major shift at one point. I think that at the beginning, they, like grandmother in Africa, lived in tribes. Number of Neanderthalers survived the birthing process, and they lived together as a group. But among that group, a certain number went through an experience which is hard to define, but seems linked to cryogenics.
Yeah, when they were stuck in time.
Then, after that process, the people that hadn't gone through the cryogenic system and the people who had a different relationship than had existed before when they were all the same. To the point, I suggest, where the ones who had the experience no longer felt comfortable with the ones who didn't. decided to manufacture their own version, being like them, a Neanderthaler like them. And that version was a halfway between Neanderthaler and human. That's what we call Cro-Magnon. Cro-Magnon basically served the Neanderthaler at first. And
they lived before the Ice Age, right?
They lived since 40,000 B.C., and the Ice Age began at 24,000 B.C. So they were at least 16,000 years before the Ice Age.
Now, what was the structure physically?
Because you can manufacture them, there is no single person or shape or what have you. You can make anything you want. You can have short ones and tall ones, white ones and black ones, squinty eyes, round eyes, hair, no hair.
But they were Cro-Magnon, so what was that made them, that makes them like Cro-Magnon rather than...
The word Cro-Magnon suggests intelligent, helper. A model for something to come later, Gnostic, linked to intelligent, Gnon at the end of Cro-Magnon. Comes from Gnostic and Crow, most intelligent bird, and it speaks, so it suggests that instead of just making sounds, it worked on languaging.
So why do they do that with the crows? Why do they always try to weave that in, that like they try to associate it with evil?
Because we're egg layers.
We're egg layers.
The mothers of our type is a layer of eggs. Whether you lay an egg for it to grow in the trees like a monkey, or lay an egg for it to fly like a bird, the only difference is where you lay the egg. You lay it inside of you for growth until it can handle life on its own, or like a bird, you put it in a nest and let it do much of the effort itself. They're still coming from eggs, and water snakes and eels and all those. They all lay eggs. So we are just a version. We're the basic animal that walks standing up on the planet, where some animals live in trees and some become birds and fly. It's all a process of change, adapting to the conditions that living in.
And adaptation, that takes, like, for it to actually change the person, how long do you think that would take? Like thousands of years? Or probably even millions, right?
Well, change is the survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
So if the survival is easy, change would come slowly. Survival is difficult, change comes faster.
Now, human beings, I guess, have an advantage over other species because they can actually change themselves through like different types of...
The key difference is reasoning beyond self-service and instant gratification. Not dealing with just survival. You're basically looking at a long-term plan. So that brings on reason. But with reason always comes the gang who wants to manipulate it for their own purposes, and those are usually linked to phonetics. Phonetics is suggestive of the phone and the phone company, since the symbol of communications was a telephone pole with wires on both sides. The letter T is symbolic of getting information from one place, dealing with it at your place, and then passing it on. The word reason, when you add a phone pole in front of it, becomes treason.
So using your own reasoning becomes treason.
If you manipulate the information for personal gratification and instant gratification, you're basically treasonous to creation and to the people you live with.
And instant gratification and long-term thinking, that's basically good and evil, right? They say.
Yeah.
Because that's what I see.
Can be described as good and evil, yeah.
Yeah.
But what is good to one person is not necessarily good to another.
Yeah.
You have masochists in this world, and they love being whipped.
Yeah, and good and evil, it's just linked to the same structure. So,
when you say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it sounds reasonable, but as I said, if you're a masochist, you're not getting what you planned. If you let other people who are masochists do unto you what they'd like to have done unto them.
Yeah, and people who are like that, that's usually from like social engineering.
Yeah, it's a feeling of not being loved, not feeling important in their own eyes, not loving themselves is the outcome, or they lash out.
And that's how they are treated in these societies, or any type of hierarchy structure. They're like that. I think that's a technique that's just passed on.
Oh, sure. When it's done all around you, like women still wearing a burqa. On one hand, they're being told it's because they're prized possessions. Don't want people to kidnap them, steal them. That's why they have to be kept in a sack. But in reality, it's more for personal gratification, ownership of property, that property being another individual.
Yeah, with that massacre, that abuse, I see that was like that's part of the culture, like in Haiti, to beat your children. And people, it's funny too when you look at it, because people, when they grow up, they actually thank the person who's doing the beating, and then they pass that on, thinking it's normal. But that's all like psychology and stuff.
Yeah, it's a generational thing that develops when the leadership is like that. People copy the leaders of their environment because they think that's the best place to be. And
that's what the leaders of the world are doing.
Yeah. What you have in our society is a world run by media, politicians, and big business. Much of what they do would be considered unethical by a majority of the population, but they are working with an advantage over the people, is they are protected by the police. So it's a police-protected society that we have around us.
Yeah.
The police enforce the laws in a discriminatory way for some people and against others. And I know they'll all claim that's not true, but that is the evidence to anybody who looks around them. They collect people along the side of the road to give them traffic tickets, to enforce bylaws, they say, for your own safety. But in fact, much of it is to collect money for the politicians, and on the other hand, establish a record that the individual then is stuck with when they go before an insurance company. The insurance company will use the fact that a person had an accident in order to double or triple their premiums. Now, it's seen it with my own eyes, a policeman coming to an individual and say, you had an accident this morning and you left the scene of an accident. And what he's really referring to is the person was in a parking spot and backed up and just basically touched bumpers. That's why they made bumpers, by the way, in the first place. Stuck in a small place. But because you don't report an accident, since an accident didn't happen,
they can get more money from that.
The policeman comes by and charges you with not reporting an accident, which he views as an accident because he's being rewarded separately from his pay and together with his pay.
Oh, they pay them like
companies.
Under the table type of thing, you say?
Yeah, sure. Trips to holiday places and stuff like that where people have access to funds. Many of the law enforcement and political world will receive money in foreign countries, and it's in the form of a bank deposit in say, the Bahamas. And they go on holidays, and they access a cash machine to withdraw the funds. But when they return back home, they can access the same cash machine. So if they get an extra $500 a month from the cash machine for having done, quote-unquote, favors to someone within the system, they can really change their lifestyle. You can't just go by the income they receive from their salaries. There was a case in Montreal where 15 or 20 judges got together and funded a pot of capital to buy apartment buildings. Of course, if a member of organized crime was before them and they let them off easily, then the building that they had just bought for $1 million was sold for $2 million. There seemed to be no relationship between their investing on the outside and the decisions made in court, but in fact there was. One judge decided that he would be strict the other 19 in the pool would come down on them and say, you're affecting all of our incomes.
Yeah. They hint at things like this, and from what I've seen, like in movies, they show that how that kind of system runs.
Well, movies are used for propaganda purposes. And,
oh, yeah.
And eventually they tell you everything that's going on. Most of it, most people can't see. It just goes over their head. They couldn't consider that to be normal.
It's funny how they do it.
Why do politicians steal? Well, for the same reasons as bakers bake and butchers butcher. Stealing is the task of a politician.
Mm-hmm. It's funny how they do that. Like, they'll tell you so many lies and go, hey, by the way, here's the truth. But it's just...
Well, they're not in charge, so it doesn't matter what they tell you.
Yeah, they just do
it. Even when they become the government, they're not in charge. They just do what they're being told to do. So.
Yeah.
They'll tell you anything. It's like being on the highway in the Bahamas, and you ask somebody where someplace is, and they'll send you off down the road 20 miles, not because that's where you want to go, but that's where you won't be around them and they won't have to deal with you. Mm-hmm. Had that happen a number of times.
So yeah, like he was saying, like they keep the salary of people, like especially like NYPD, the salary's really low. They do that. I know it's set up like that purposely, just so they can buy them off.
Yeah,
it's easier.
The world of drugs is not for some guy in the bushes of Colombia to make money. I mean, what's the use of stacks of money in Colombia? Yeah. The purpose of the drug world is to raise cash to use as bribes. Cash is used to bribe politicians, judges, prosecutors, and all of the people that make the system work.
I remember a couple of years ago, I watched this documentary that the U.S. government, they showed how powerful Pablo Escobar was, and they came after him. And I guess most people would see it like, yeah, they were doing a good job. But what I saw was just, here's a guy that just didn't want to pay them off anymore.
Yeah,
and it
was a management thing.
Yeah.
They needed to change the manager because this manager wouldn't agree to give them more.
Yeah, I guess he got too greedy.
They had the same thing with John Gotti and other gangs. You did ask a question in your last email.
Oh, yeah.
Which I should deal with before I go take my shower and go to bed. Mm-hmm. And you asked, what does it mean in the code when you see a combination of letters like PH and PT? Mm-hmm. I remember you saying something like 16, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
I know PT is little in French, petit, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
So, P is the end of the line. If you consider you put stuff in your mouth, it goes past the esophagus and works its way down. The penultimate position is caca, and the final position is P. That's why the letter P is the letter P, and it's shaped like a number 6 or a number 9. If you can flip and turn, it can be either one of them. So what do they mean by P? Well, urine in a body is the last stage. What it does is seek out dead cells within the body and throw them out. So if you have a P next to an H, you're basically talking about the last stages of connection. H is two linked together. a bar on one side, a bar on the other side with a link in the middle. P just means you're at the last stage. So a pharmacist, a physician, a philosopher, each in their own world is basically the end of the line. That's where you go looking for answers.
I thought AE was the end of the line.
A is the end. E is a beginning of some activity. But in the world of professions, P basically is the end of the line.
Oh, so it applies definitely to different...
Yeah. Professionals, professions, everything that deals with the system's functioning. Whereas the PT, on the other hand, is talking about communications. So communications at the end is a PT. Example, if you take an egg and you clean it out, that's the end of that egg and that DNA for the person it came from. But the empty egg, being the end of something, is also the beginning of something, because you can then, in that shell, stick in new DNA and start something else going. So, in that context, a pH can basically mean a new beginning, not simply a new end. Not simply the end, it's a beginning of something else. So if you look at the letter P, it also resembles a number 6 or number 9. Yeah. When you attach a common link between the two bars, the one bar of the H and the bar of the P being one bar, one on top of the other, the number that is produced appears as a 1 and a 6, 16.
Yeah.
An end of something, a beginning of something. At 16 is the end of childhood, the beginning of your independent life in the world. That's why they have coming out parties for Sweet 16, coming out into the world.
Interesting. Because now I look at things, I don't know, like, you have a pretty detailed view of these things, but
well,
like
I'm older than you.
So you looked at it longer.
Yeah, it's almost 3 times. So. Yeah. Although I know people my age who know nothing, but it all depends on how much searching you do along the way.
Yeah. Like when I look at things on my job, I like just the prices or the sizes of or the number of beers or something, and it's like, why would they sell a 6-pack? Why would they make it exactly 6? Why would they make it 99 cents or and everything says light, corporate light, and some things I actually spell with LITE. These little things I see, and I think because they could make it any price they wanted, really, because the prices do change. But like some prices are...
There's a psychological reason for using 99.
It's right under $1.
You think it's cheaper than $1.
Yeah.
So that's a marketing.
Yeah. But when you see why they sell 36 packs or 6 packs, why those are psychological too, I guess.
If
these numbers,
you
36.
make the basic decision that your common denominator is going to be a 6-pack, it's based upon the fact that number 6 is the end of the line. You start with 0, an egg, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And your perfect model is a woman who can make a baby. That's number 6.
And then there's a new beginning out of that.
Then there's an altar. Number 7 is an altar.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the 7, you have the 8, which is the male made with 2 balls.
Yeah.
If you want to change the 8 and make it female on the outside, male on the inside, the 2 balls become 2 squares. So you've modified the 8.
Yeah, I just popped in my head right now. I was just looking at the symbol today, like the sign, the rings, because I know O or 0, like a circle, is like incest, eternity,
yeah,
and other things. But like, why do they put them in the Olympic symbol? They're all linked, and
because
I guess
of exactly that. It's the continuation of life. Things go around in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
The mother gives birth. The child grows up to be a mother and give birth. That child grows up to be a mother and give birth. So it's continuity is in the shape of an O. Egg is in the shape of an elliptical O. So what it's suggesting, as an orbit does in space, is that there is a reason for attracting things into an ellipse as opposed to allow it to turn in a circle, and it has to do with heat and cold, so that if an egg, for example, is under a chicken and stays in the same place, it can get too hot and die. Yeah. The role of the chicken is to keep rolling the egg so that what's inside is basically continually being changed in its position. Doesn't develop bed sores, that type of thing. Same thing happens with orbit. Creates the equivalent of rolling by creating seasons, some warmer than others.
So what do they mean? Like, what's that allegory then? What does that symbolize when you see these gypsies or fortune tellers? They look through a globe to see the future, or a spear.
Well, they're fooling you.
Yeah, but what's the point of the whole... Yeah, I know they're fooling people, but what's the whole point of using a globe? Why do they choose that spear?
Well, I guess because planets start off as broken pieces of rock, and as they revolve in space, eventually they shape themselves more and more into a circular globe. Mm-hmm. And the word globe has O and E in it, and therefore it's suggesting a new beginning. Yeah,
that's in donkey too. The word, and Jesus was on it. That was the new beginning.
Donkey was the first vehicle.
That's why it has O and E in it, because it was beginning. And the last vehicle, what's the last vehicle?
Formula 1.
Huh?
Formula 1.
Formula 1.
On the ground is the fastest car. But the vehicle that moves the fastest today is a space vehicle.
And what's the name of it?
Well, the shuttle, the vehicle that does the transport between places, but it's not the vehicle to go into space.
And that's the vehicle that's going to have probably the letters A&E. Oh. All right. I just want to ask one more question.
Challenger is one of the space shuttles, and all of the names, but they're only suggesting short trips. But they are beginning and end. They move back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
It has 2 telephone poles in it, so it suggesting a communications between two places. The shut. Sit.
Or close. Shut means to close.
Okay, so I must say my goodbyes again because I got to go take a shower and get to bed.
I just want to say one thing. Like, what did you like? It was all these experiences that you went through, like traveling around Canada, that helped you to I don't know, jog up those old memories.
Sure. You know, even when you write me some material, you send me something on Francis Bacon, for example. You, in reading it, I remembered some of the things that I knew but I hadn't thought about in a long time.
Yeah.
And one of the things was about how they're talking about absorption through the skin. That you don't really need to consume poisons or medicines. Much of it can be passed on to you in absorption. And anybody that uses soap or shampoo or anything like that is basically putting things into their body without realizing it.
Yeah. That's why, like me, when I use, I know it's probably not any better for me, but I try to use shampoo and soap that just doesn't have, it's unscented. I don't want anything, but I'm still probably putting something.
Yeah, you're still putting whatever chemistry they've got designed for that particular soap. Some of the stuff is too much zinc in some soaps, or too much sand. Basically serves little purpose. So
your best bet is just washing yourself with just water and just don't use anything.
That's the way it used to be done.
Yeah. But they got us so self-conscious about how we smell. And
it's all designed to make us stress out if we don't have things. You know?
Yeah, and you know what? When I listen to what people say, people in, I guess, the other world, like I've been growing, because my hair's growing out and I haven't shaved in like 3 weeks, and my beard's getting a little big. Somebody said to me, it's like, oh, you look like an African.
Okay.
And that's supposed to be bad?
Yeah.
I'm looking like how I am originally, how we were originally. But it's crazy how they got so fooled to saying things that are actually good, but they... Wow.
Yeah, you look like an original person. Yeah, thanks.
I'm trying my best.
Yeah. This didn't happen by accident. I made it happen. You know, I let it happen. I know I every time we have an election in Canada here, in this region, we have to go to a town called Bishop's Mills. And it's in the basement of the church. And I walk in there every time because I used to write on the ballot, I do not support organized criminal activity. And they changed the ballot to make it completely black, leaving only the place for an X to write in. So now I have to write CROOKS. But they know me, I guess, because they see the same thing every election. They know when I come in that that's what they're going to get. And they look at me and they say, look at him with his beard and long hair. And they're looking at me with disdain. And I'm looking at them, and on the wall behind them is a picture of Jesus on the cross, long hair and a beard.
Yeah.
So, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
How they can adore one and hate the other for the same reason. So.
Yeah. That's in, who else does that? They always show you that, the person with the long beard, like Merlin, and these guys had all this knowledge and wisdom.
And obviously, if the person was born in North Africa he would look more like an African than he looks like a Caucasian.
Yeah.
You know? So somebody is playing with imagery along the way. In any event, have a good week.
All right.
We'll talk to you again.
Okay. Good night.